The gym was loud that afternoon. Heavy bags slammed against the walls. Sweat dripped onto worn mats. Phones were raised, recording every move. In the center of the room stood a man everyone knew. The self-proclaimed black belt champion. Muscles tight, tattoos exposed, ego louder than the punching bags. He loved attention. He lived for humiliation. Then the door opened. An older man stepped inside. Simple clothes, calm walk. No entourage. No noise. Just quiet confidence. Some people glanced at him, then looked away. The black belt noticed. He laughed. "Yo, you lost, Grandpa?" He shouted across the gym. "This isn't a retirement home." The crowd chuckled. Cameras zoomed in. The old man didn't react. He walked slowly toward the mat, eyes relaxed, posture balanced. That only made it worse. The black belt walked closer, circling him like a predator. "Seriously," he said loudly. Look at him, gray hair, slow steps. "What are you gonna do, stretch your back?" Laughter erupted. Someone whispered, "Man, this is embarrassing." The older man finally looked up. It was Steven Seagal. But no one recognized him. The black belt shook his head, smiling. "You know," he said, pointing a finger at Steven's chest. "Guys like you come here thinking experience means something." He tapped his own belt proudly. "This," he said, "this means I've earned my place." Steven spoke calmly, almost gently. "I'm not here to prove anything." The black belt burst out laughing. "Oh, that's perfect. You hear that? Grandpa's a philosopher." He leaned closer, voice dripping with mockery. "Let me give you advice, old man. Go home before someone gets hurt." The room went quiet for a second. Steven's eyes didn't change. No anger, no fear. Just calm. Then he said, one sentence, low, steady, controlled. "Respect saves people from pain they don't see coming." The black belt scoffed. "Pain?" He laughed. "From you." He turned to the cameras. "Clip this," he said. "I'm about to teach Grandpa his last lesson." And that was the moment when everyone watching made the same mistake. They thought the fight was about strength. They thought age meant weakness. They thought the quiet man had nothing left. They were wrong. The gym smelled of sweat, leather, and the faint metallic tang of blood from earlier sparring sessions. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, dust particles dancing lazily in the beams, and the sound of grunts, punches, and shouts filled the air. This was the place where fighters came to prove themselves, where strength and ego clashed daily, and the loudest voices often thought they were the strongest. But today, there was a new presence in the room. A man who moved slowly, but every step carried weight, calm, controlled, unassuming. A man who didn't need to announce his arrival. The black belt thug was the first to notice him. Tattooed arms crossed over a chest that looked like it belonged in a magazine, muscles bulging even under the tight t-shirt. His smirk stretched across his face like he owned the place. He thrived on attention, always the center of every gym spotlight. And today, it had a target. The older man quietly making his way to the mat. "Hey, whoa!" the thug called out, his voice echoing. "We'll let the old man in here." He laughed loud and harsh, the kind of laugh that made people uncomfortable, the kind of laugh that tried to humiliate others before they even spoke. The crowd instinctively shifted, some curious, some amused. A few pulled out their phones, sensing content, the kind that would go viral online. After all, this was social media gold, a gray-haired man stepping into the lion's den of a black belt fighter. The older man didn't flinch. He didn't shout back. He didn't make any move to defend himself. He walked slowly toward the center of the gym, hands relaxed at his sides. Every step deliberate, every movement controlled. There was something in his posture, a quiet confidence that made the room take notice, even if no one fully understood why. The thug's smirk grew. "Seriously," he said, pointing at the older man. "This is your idea of training. Walking into my gym, you're old, slow, out of shape. What are you gonna do, crack your hip before you even start?" The crowd chuckled nervously, some whispered, "This is embarrassing," while others recorded every second, waiting for the old man to crumble. Then, the thug circled him, moving like a predator, tapping his black belt with a sharp smack. "You see this?" he said. "Years of sweat, pain, dedication. And you think experience can beat raw power. You think philosophy and calm eyes will save you when I strike." Still, the older man didn't respond with anger or aggression. His calm gaze met the thug's with quiet intensity. "I'm not here to prove anything," he said softly. The voice was steady, measured, a contrast to the loud, mocking tone of the younger fighter. The black belt laughed so hard it echoed off the walls. "Not here to prove anything?" he mocked. "Oh, perfect. He's a philosopher now. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Grandpa, the thinker." He leaned closer, eyes narrowing, a cruel smile playing across his face. "Let me give you some advice. Go home. Stretch your legs. Drink your tea. And for the love of everyone here, stay out of my way before someone gets hurt." A silence fell over the crowd for a second. Everyone waited for the older man to react. The whispers, the laughter, the phones, all stopped. Then, the calm man spoke again. His words cut through the tension like a blade. "Respect saves people from pain they don't see coming," he said. His voice low, controlled, almost soft. The thug laughed, dismissive. "Pain," he sneered. "From you." He turned to the crowd. "Clip this. Record it. Watch Grandpa get schooled." His energy was like a storm. Loud, brash, and full of confidence. He was ready to make a spectacle. But what no one realized, not the crowd, not the thug, not even the trainers standing on the sidelines, was that this calm, quiet man had seen far more fights than anyone in this gym could imagine. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to flex muscles or show off. His power was in control, timing, and precision. As the thug bounced on his feet, circling and taunting, the older man simply adjusted his stance. Not aggressive, not defensive, just perfectly balanced. Eyes locked on the black belt, muscles relaxed, breathing even. Every subtle shift in weight and position was deliberate. The crowd began to notice the tension building. It wasn't just an age difference, it was experience versus arrogance. Calm versus chaos, knowledge versus ego. And the air felt electric, like a storm about to break. And then the bell rang. Or maybe it was just the unspoken challenge in the thug's eyes. One thing was certain. Everyone in that gym would remember this day. They didn't know how, they didn't know when, but the old man standing quietly, unassuming, in the center of the room was about to teach them all a lesson they would never forget. The black belt thug wasn't done, not by a long shot. He stepped closer to Steven. Every step a show of dominance. Tattoos flexed under the bright gym lights, muscles bulging, chest puffed out, ego shining brighter than any sweat-drenched physique in the room. He circled him like a predator, and with every move, he made sure the crowd noticed. Cameras zoomed. Phones recorded. Some laughed nervously. Others whispered, sensing the storm about to break. "Come on, Grandpa," the thug sneered. "Don't just stand there like a statue. You think calm eyes scare anyone? You think silence is a weapon?" He tapped his black belt sharply. "This belt, this is earned through years of pain, sweat, and discipline. What do you have? Wrinkles and a slow walk." Steven said nothing. He adjusted his stance slightly, shoulders relaxed, feet planted perfectly on the mat. Every movement measured, controlled, effortless. The calm intensity in his eyes was almost unbearable. A silent warning that he was not to be underestimated. The thug laughed, loud and harsh. "Everyone, look at this. The old man thinks he's a fighter. Ha, this is comedy gold. I should film this and post it. People will die laughing." He threw his arms wide for emphasis, the cameras capturing every moment. "Let's see if he even flinches when I hit him." Then he pushed Steven's shoulder, just a light tap, but enough to provoke a reaction. The older man didn't flinch. He didn't shout. He didn't step back. He only looked at the thug, calm, almost amused. "Sometimes," he said softly, "arrogance blinds the eyes that should see." The thug's eyes narrowed. He didn't like that, not at all. Most people would have flinched or argued. Most people would have reacted. But Steven had done nothing, nothing. And that made the thug furious. "Oh, you're one of those types, huh?" he growled. Silent, smug. Acting like you're untouchable. I like it. I'll show you what happens to grandpas like you in my gym. He began a series of showy attacks, punches thrown just fast enough to impress the crowd, kicks designed to intimidate, spinning moves that screamed skill and confidence. Each strike was exaggerated, flashy, meant to humiliate, not to fight. He wanted to make a spectacle, and he wanted the old man to panic. The crowd leaned forward, some gasped, some whispered nervously. The tension in the room was palpable. You could feel it in the air. Every muscle in the thug's body screamed aggression, and every silent, relaxed movement of Steven's body screamed control. "Come on," the thug shouted. "Show me something, old man. I'm not impressed by your wrinkles." Steven didn't respond verbally. He simply shifted slightly, his weight perfectly balanced. His eyes remained calm, unbroken. A faint smile touched his lips, and in that moment, the crowd began to sense something they hadn't before. This wasn't about age, muscle, or ego. This was about skill, timing, precision, experience that didn't need to shout to be recognized. The thug, growing more frustrated, tried to push harder. He lunged forward, fists swinging, kicking with power. Every move was calculated to provoke, to intimidate, to humiliate. And then, in a subtle motion, Steven adjusted his footing. Not fast, not flashy, almost imperceptible to anyone, not watching carefully. He moved just enough to shift the thug's momentum slightly. A tiny misstep. A crack in the thug's confidence. The thug stumbled. Just a fraction, and the crowd noticed. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you see that?" He barely moved, and what was that? But the thug didn't stop. He was blind to it. Arrogance is blinding. He was so focused on mocking, on theatrics, on proving dominance that he didn't realize he had already lost control of the situations. Steven said nothing. He didn't need to. His calm, measured presence was a warning stronger than any punch or kick, and the tension built higher, every second dragging the audience closer to the inevitable moment. The moment when arrogance would meet experience and humiliation would flip. The thug threw one final showy punch, loud and dramatic, aiming to make a statement in front of the entire gym. Steven simply shifted his weight and waited. The air was electric. The room held its breath. Every eye focused on the silent man in the center, the quiet calm before the storm, the pause that everyone instinctively knew was the prelude to something unforgettable. And in that silence, the thug's overconfidence, his mockery, and his loud ego had done exactly what it always does. Set the stage for a lesson he would never forget. The tension in the gym was unbearable. Every pair of eyes was fixed on the center mat. Every phone pointed, every whisper hushed into silence. Sweat dripped from the ceiling lights, hitting the worn mats with a dull, echoing patter. The black belt thug flexed his muscles, bouncing on his feet, brimming with arrogance. He had all the confidence in the world, too much in fact. And that confidence was about to collide with experience far beyond his imagination. "All right, Grandpa," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "One round. No excuses. Let's see what you've got." Steven Seagal didn't respond verbally. He didn't even raise his fists yet. He simply shifted slightly, adjusting his stance, subtle, almost imperceptible movements that only someone with years of training would notice. His feet were perfectly balanced. His hands relaxed but ready. His eyes calm but intensely focused. The thug laughed, bouncing on the balls of his feet, ready to strike. "Come on, don't be shy, show me what an old man can do." The trainer at the edge of the mat whispered nervously to the crowd. "I don't think he knows. That's Steven Seagal." Some of the spectators tilted their heads, but most were too focused on the looming spectacle to realize who was really standing there. Then, the bell rang. Or maybe it wasn't a bell. Maybe it was just the unspoken challenge in the air. The electric moment everyone felt in their bones. The thug lunged forward, fists swinging, kicks high and fast, every strike exaggerated, meant to intimidate and entertain. The crowd gasped, some backing up instinctively, others recording every second. Steven didn't move. Not yet. He simply watched. Every strike, every feint, every attempt to provoke him was carefully noted in his eyes. The black belt's confidence radiated like a beacon, blinding him to the subtle danger creeping into his movements. He thought he was in control, thought he was showing dominance. thought he was teaching the grandpa a lesson in front of everyone. The first strike landed, or so it seemed. The thug threw a fast jab, expecting Steven to flinch, to react, to be slowed by age. But Steven shifted his weight almost imperceptibly. The punch slid past his chest. The air whispered past his shoulder, not blocked, not deflected aggressively, simply redirected. The crowd murmured. "Did you see that? He didn't even move." "How did he?" The thug snarled in frustration. "Move, you old man." He swung again. Harder, faster, a spinning hook this time. Every eye followed the motion, waiting for Steven to show weakness. But again, he didn't. He only adjusted slightly, a micro step to the side, and the strike missed. Confidence wavered for a fraction of a second. The thug's smile flickered. His arrogance, which had carried him this far, began to crack. Yet he kept pressing, desperate to humiliate, desperate to dominate, desperate to prove he was the strongest in the room. "You're too slow," he shouted. "Come on. Hit me." He lunged with both fists. A combination of punches designed for speed and theatrics, designed to wow the crowd. Steven finally moved. Not in haste, not in anger, not in force. Every motion was deliberate, controlled, precise. He shifted, sidestepped, redirected, and for a moment, the thug was off balance. His own energy betrayed him. His power became momentum that worked against him. The spectators leaned forward. Phones trembled in hands. Some whispered, "Ho!" Some were frozen, unable to blink. They could feel the pivot, the invisible shift in control that only a master could command. Steven spoke softly, almost casually, but loud enough for the thug to hear. "You rely on strength. I rely on skill. Strength can be impressive. Skill is unforgettable." The black belt's face twisted in anger. He lunged again, faster this time, but already he was reacting to someone who was not reacting. Confusion entered his movements. His aggression had become predictable, and that predictability was a doorway. Every step Steven took, every subtle adjustment, set up the inevitable. The silent man standing calmly on the mat, who everyone thought was just an old grandpa, was now preparing for the moment when arrogance would meet experience, when overconfidence would meet precision, and when the lesson that no one could see coming would arrive. And the crowd knew, deep down, that something unforgettable was about to happen. They could feel it in the air. The tension, the pause, the moment right before the storm hits. The room was electric. Every eye fixed on the mat. Phones shook in hands. The air felt heavy, as if the gym itself was holding its breath. Sweat, heat, and tension blended into a tangible weight pressing down on everyone in the room. The black belt thug had gone all out. He lunged, swung, kicked, spun. Every strike loud, flashy, designed to intimidate and humiliate. He was confident, too confident. The crowd cheered him on, not knowing that their cheers were about to become gasps of disbelief. Steven Seagal stood still, calm, relaxed. Not a muscle wasted, not a word wasted. Eyes focused, reading every motion, every twitch, every slight shift in balance. He didn't move until the perfect moment. The thug growled in frustration. "Come on, fight. Show me what you've got, Grandpa." He threw another series of fast punches, twisting his body, trying to catch Steven off guard. Steven's movement was almost imperceptible. A micro step to the side, a slight rotation of his shoulders. The first punch glanced harmlessly past him. The second missed entirely. The third, a strong right hook, carried all the force of the thug's arrogance, and Steven was ready. He didn't even flinch. In one fluid motion, Steven stepped forward, just enough to close the distance. He didn't swing wildly. He didn't shout. He didn't overexert. Every movement was deliberate, precise, timing, balance, skill. He grabbed the thug's wrist as the punch came, redirecting the force. A subtle twist, a pivot, and the thug's momentum betrayed him. He stumbled, barely a fraction, but enough to unbalance someone relying entirely on raw power and theatrics. The crowd whispered, "Wait, did you see that? He didn't even hit him. What's happening?" Steven didn't speak. He simply moved like water flowing into the opening created by the thug's arrogance. With a smooth, controlled motion, he stepped behind him. In one clean, precise strike, he hit the right pressure point. Not to maim, not to injure, but to incapacitate. The thug's eyes widened. Confusion. Shock. And then the floor came up to meet him. Boom. The gym went silent. Phones lowered. Mouths dropped. The black belt thug was on the mat. Unconscious. His ego obliterated faster than anyone could react. No theatrics. No wasted energy. Just a single perfect movement executed by a master who had spent decades honing skill over strength. The crowd gasped. Some ran forward to check. Some stayed frozen, staring in disbelief. A few whispered nervously that was over in seconds. Steven adjusted his stance calmly, as if nothing had happened. He didn't look proud. He didn't gloat. He didn't even raise his hands. He simply stood there, breathing evenly, eyes scanning the room. A trainer approached, shaking. I've never seen anyone do that so fast, so clean. He didn't even touch you. Steven's eyes softened slightly. Strength fades, he said quietly. Skill does not. Remember that. The black belt thug slowly stirred, groaning, blinking, clearly confused. His arrogance, his insults, his public mockery, all undone in a single silent strike. The crowd began to murmur, some whispering words of respect, others stunned into silence. Phones continued to record, but now the story was different. No longer about a funny old grandpa being mocked. Now it was about mastery, control, and the lesson that arrogance cannot overcome experience. Steven finally spoke, addressing the room. Never underestimate someone because of their age. Never mistake loudness for power. True strength is silent. True skill is earned. The old thug lay there, humbled, defeated not by raw force, but by precision, patience, and decades of experience. And everyone who witnessed it, friends, trainers, spectators, even casual gym goers, understood a hard truth. The quiet man in the room is often the most dangerous. Steven didn't linger. He adjusted his jacket, gave a small nod to the crowd, and walked toward the exit. The lesson was delivered. The point was made. No words wasted, no unnecessary showmanship, and the gym would remember this day forever. The day an old man, mocked, underestimated, and called a grandpa, demonstrated a so clean, so precise, so unforgettable, that it left a room full of tough fighters and loud mouths, utterly speechless. Faye Part 5 complete. The gym was silent. Not the nervous, tentative silence of people waiting for the next punch. Not the quiet tension before action. No, this was a stunned silence, heavy and thick, like the air itself had been knocked out of the room. The black belt thug lay on the mat, slowly stirring, his chest rising and falling, still disoriented. His face, once smug and cocky, was now pale with embarrassment. The arrogance that had fueled him for years had been shredded in seconds by a single silent strike from a man everyone had underestimated. Around him, the crowd began to process what had just happened. Phones dropped to the mats, people whispered, Did he just? That was unreal. Who is this guy? Some were shaking their heads, others laughing nervously, unsure if they were witnessing fiction or fact. The trainers approached cautiously, helping the thug to sit up. His arms trembled, his pride shattered. I don't understand, he muttered. I've fought black belts, champions. I've never been taken down like that. One trainer looked at him and said softly, Son, you got too confident. You forgot the most important part of fighting: respect. Experience beats arrogance every time. The thug's eyes met Steven's, and for the first time they weren't mocking, they were humbled. He realized the mistake he had made, judging a person by appearance, underestimating skill, mocking experience. He had been arrogant, loud, and reckless, and it had cost him. Steven didn't gloat. He didn't taunt. He simply adjusted his stance, hands relaxed, posture calm. Every movement radiated confidence and control without the need for display. His eyes scanned the gym, taking in the trainers, the crowd, and the defeated thug. Then he spoke softly, but every word carried weight. Never mistake age for weakness, he said. Never mistake loudness for power. And never mistake arrogance for skill. Respect is earned, not demanded. Strength fades, skill lasts. The thug swallowed hard, his pride wincing, but there was also a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He had been humiliated publicly, yes, but the lesson was invaluable. One moment of disrespect, one moment of ego-driven arrogance, had been met with a master's calm precision. Around the gym, whispers turned into nods of agreement. The spectators began to discuss what they had seen. That was unbelievable, and he didn't even need to yell or fight showily, just skill. I've never seen anyone move like that. That's a lesson in respect, not just fighting. The crowd started to applaud, softly at first, then louder, growing in intensity. Not for a fight won with brute force, but for a lesson delivered with quiet mastery. The kind of respect that doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to show off, but leaves a lasting impression. Steven took a slow step forward. He glanced at the black belt thug one last time. The young fighter's shoulders slumped. He was humbled, embarrassed, and surprisingly reflective. He nodded, just slightly acknowledging the lesson he had just been taught. Good, Steven said calmly. Learn it. Practice it. Don't forget it. Arrogance will always betray you. Then he turned to leave. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing the presence of someone legendary. Someone whose calm command of a room and a fight was far more powerful than words, than show, than strength alone. Before he exited, one trainer asked, "Sir, what about him, the black belt?" Steven looked over his shoulder. "Let him reflect," he said simply. "True understanding comes after humility, not before. He has a choice, learn or repeat his mistakes." The gym remained quiet long after he left. The phones continued to record. But now the footage was no longer about a funny old man being mocked. It was about mastery, about patience, about respect earned silently. And the black belt thug sat on the mat, shaken but thoughtful. The arrogance that had fueled his fame, his online videos, his loud persona, had been stripped away. He realized the gym wasn't about showing off. It wasn't about looking strong. It was about skill, discipline, and respect. Things he had ignored in his pursuit of ego. Some spectators approached Steven even as he walked out. "Thank you," they said. "That was incredible." He gave a small nod, barely acknowledging them, then disappeared out the door, leaving behind a lesson louder than any shout, more powerful than any punch, more unforgettable than any display of force. The gym would remember this day for years, not for the KO itself, but for the lesson behind it, that arrogance blinds, disrespect destroys, and true skill speaks for itself. And as for the black belt thug, he would never forget the quiet man who reminded him what real strength, control, and respect really mean. Faye Part 6 complete. The gym was quiet now, not the tense, anticipatory silence from before. This was a reflective silence, a space heavy with lessons learned, humility realized, and respect earned. The black belt thug sat on the mat, still recovering physically, but more importantly, his mind racing. He understood, finally, that the world of fighting and of life didn't reward arrogance. It rewarded skill, patience, and respect. The crowd lingered. Spectators whispered, replaying what they had just witnessed. Phones still recorded, but the content had shifted. No longer was it about a mockable old man stepping into a gym. No, this was now about mastery, about control, about how quiet confidence could shatter loud arrogance in an instant. Some younger fighters approached the thug, curious, hesitant. "Dude, what happened?" one asked. "I mean, you're a black belt. You're supposed to dominate. And you didn't even land a hit." The young fighter shook his head. "Man, that was insane. He didn't even try to fight flashy, just control, timing, skill. He made you fall without hitting you like you expected." The thug didn't answer immediately. He was still absorbing the lesson. He finally spoke, voice low. I thought I was strong. I thought I could intimidate anyone. I was wrong." He looked at Steven, who was now heading toward the exit, calm as ever, hands at his sides, shoulders relaxed, a silent storm in his eyes. That's when the trainer, still standing on the mat, called out, "Son, remember this. Strength fades, ego fades, skill endures. Experience is invisible to the arrogant until it's too late. You just learned it the hard way. The black belt nodded, swallowing his pride. For the first time he understood that fighting, real fighting, wasn't about theatrics, nor about being the loudest or the strongest in the room. It was about timing, precision, and control. It was about patience, observation, and respecting the opponent, even if the opponent appeared weaker or older. Meanwhile, the spectators slowly started applauding. Not for a flashy victory, not for a dramatic punch, but for the demonstration of true mastery. The quiet command of a man who didn't need to prove himself. That applause grew louder, a mix of awe and respect. Some whispered, "He's a master not just of fighting but of life." And Steven, he didn't turn back, he didn't need to. His work was done. His presence, his calm demeanor, and his single, precise action had already left an indelible mark on everyone in the gym. He had taught them without a word of arrogance that true strength isn't measured by noise, size, or aggression. It's measured by skill, patience, and the respect you show, both to yourself and to others. Before leaving, he gave a subtle nod to the young fighters and trainers. That nod carried more weight than any speech. It was a silent reminder. Respect is everything. Humility is power. And arrogance is the fastest path to downfall. As he walked out the door, sunlight caught the edge of his jacket, casting a long shadow across the gym floor. The black belt thug remained seated, his face pale, hands shaking slightly, ego shattered, but understanding finally that life often teaches lessons in the most direct and unforgettable ways. Steven's words echoed in the room, though softly. Never underestimate someone because of their age. Never mistake silence for weakness, and never forget that respect is earned, not demanded. Strength fades. Skill endures. The crowd began to talk, replaying what they had witnessed. Trainers discussed strategy. Fighters discussed precision. And spectators discussed humility. Everyone understood that this was more than just a fight. It was a lesson. A life lesson. One that wouldn't be forgotten. Even the black belt thug, once so loud and confident, now sat quietly reflecting. He had been humiliated, yes, but he had learned something far more valuable than winning or losing. He had learned that true power isn't shown through intimidation or ego, but through calm, controlled mastery and earned respect. And as Steven disappeared from sight, the lesson lingered. The loudest, most arrogant person in the room is rarely the strongest. Skill and experience, patience and humility. These are the forces that endure. These are the forces that command respect. In the end, the gym became quieter, wiser, and more aware. The spectators, fighters, and even the defeated black belt walked away with a single truth burned into their minds. Never underestimate experience. Never underestimate quiet skill. And above all, respect is the ultimate strength. Fey call to action type respect in the comments. If you believe real strength comes from humility, share where you're watching from. Every comment is read and appreciated. And remember, arrogance fades, skill lasts, and respect always wins.